This is Lightning Power Lunch on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
What can we say? A couple teams that played each other a ton that know each other better than anyone. So, but, I look at it too as, guys sticking up for each other and doing they feel they have to. But, on the other side of things, both power plays and penalty kills got a lot of time to, go against each other. So there was a lot of different things that came out of the game. And, but I don't know, I guess you get that with, the rivalry that's built up over these two teams in the past, 6-7 years.
I don't know if what we saw last night at Benchmark International was a surprise, maybe to the degree in how frequently it happened. Potentially you could have been. I think if you've been paying attention, knowing how hockey players are, and then you factor in the rivalry, even though it was a preseason game, I don't know, I felt like there was going to be something happening last night. I didn't anticipate 186 total penalty minutes between the two teams would transpire. Brian Engblom on the postgame show said, that'd be a light night compared to the 70s when we had bench clearing brawls. But be that as it may, partner, and let me bring in Dave Mishkin. After the Lightning took care of business against the Florida Panthers and maybe a couple of different ways as they remain undefeated in preseason, is that that game got out of control. It got out of control quickly after the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game, where it was, preseason game. And somebody from the Panthers, meaning Mr. Greer, decided to, for whatever reason, engage Brandon Hagel, who was going to the bench. Let's be very clear. I think we would both admit if Brandon Hagel was instigating or not backing down, you could see how things would develop the way it did. But Hagel, really, in a surprising move from my perspective, not so much that he was just going to the bench, not looking to engage, but when he was engaged with a cross-check and then just 2 vicious hits to the head, he didn't engage then. And maybe it's because he was stunned a little bit. You saw Cirelli and Radish come to his aid right away, but it never really recovered, Dave, after that in terms of the flow of the game and what was happening. It was, in some ways, unfortunate. I looked to our producer, Steve Ersnick, and I know he had talked to me about this during the game, and you get to a certain point where it's like, this is preseason, this is getting ridiculous. Let's get this over with. This shouldn't be happening. And they play tomorrow, but it went from, I think something's going to happen, to, boy, this really isn't just fun to watch. And let's hope everybody who had to leave the game is okay, because that's the number one priority, Mish. But last night, what we saw at the arena, I'm not surprised, but the way it just never got under control from the first period on, basically, I was a little shocked by that.
I was a little surprised. I was a little surprised because I don't know if going into a preseason game you're going to see a game like that. I mean, it's not like we see games like that every preseason. We had one between the teams in Orlando a few years ago, and maybe not coincidentally, that was the preseason after the Lightning had beaten the Panthers, I want to say in 2021, and went on to win the Cup. And, I mean, look, the Panthers started it last night. I'm not going to get into a back and forth if there are Panther fans who sometimes kind of cross over to hear what we're saying on a Lightning broadcast. I think that may have happened in the playoffs last year. But the one in Orlando, what I remember about that game in Orlando is that Sam Bennett ran Vasilevsky. That's what I remember about that game. And when something like that happens, it's on. It's on. That's a line that does not get crossed without things completely getting out of hand. And at that point, Bennett was fairly new to the Panthers. He had come to them the year before during the season, but he played against the Lightning in the playoffs. They lost. They were unhappy about that. And I think that this was a step for the Panthers to kind of gained some oomph. They ended up winning the President's Trophy that year and lost to the Lightning again in the second round. But, like, there were emotions there. You know, the Lightning had beaten the Panthers in a very emotional series the year before, and something happened in the game to light the match. Sometimes that thing doesn't happen. And actually, the first 7 minutes of the game were fairly, I mean, you mentioned it was a preseason game. Like, if the 7 minutes that we had at the beginning of the game had just continued, we probably would have had just your garden variety preseason game. But it didn't. The other thing I will say is that it may not have escalated to the level that it did escalate to had A.J. Greer targeted a different Lightning player. So I think it was not just that the event happened with Greer, but that it was Hagel. Are you kidding me? You're going after Brandon Hagel after what happened in the playoffs last year with Ekblad. The guy got a concussion. He missed the rest of the series. He even talked about after the series, are you serious? You're going for my head? Ask me to fight. I'll fight. I might get my rear end kicked. I'm paraphrasing, but I'll fight. I'll fight anyone. And here's Greer going after the same guy. So look, I'm getting worked up about it because it was Hagel. Hagel had to leave the game. What do you think is going to happen?
Sure.
Now, if you want to make the argument Greer didn't think that, you know, these two punches, which were sucker punches, would have had the effect that they had, well, if you throw a sucker punch, it can happen. I mean, we see guys sometimes throw punches with their gloves on, and in fact, it happened later in the game. But he popped Hagel. It was the second one, Greg. Yeah. He punched him once, and Hagel's kind of like, what? And then he popped him. He really popped him.
He did.
And that was after he'd cross-checked him and maybe clipped him in the face a little bit with his stick. Hagel's trying to go to the bench. So if you don't think that that is going to light a match, then, you know, you haven't really been following the sport. So the Lightning, they kind of sort of bided their time until Greer came out of the penalty box. He had to serve 14 minutes. The fact that he wasn't just thrown out of the game by the officials, even if maybe it wasn't warranted, on some levels a little surprising to me because the officials could have maybe avoided some of what happened later had they just removed Greer from the game completely. Do I think he deserved a game misconduct? Probably not, but it is preseason. Like, the officials can kind of take that.
Nobody's going to argue with you if you throw him out of the game.
Just like, this is maybe going to escalate. Let's get this guy out of the game.
Right.
They didn't. They gave him 14 minutes. Comes out of the box. Carlisle goes after him. Radish ends up fighting him. I was actually thinking we had that fan who was talking about, you know, Radish, was he comparing him to Roman Schmidt? He was like, we had the fan who was like, Radish.
Can't he be more
like
Schmidt,
Radish isn't
like
physical. And look, I give Radish credit. Like, he was throwing punches and standing up for his teammate. But your point is a good one. Like, clearly the biggest takeaway out of all this is, like, what is Brandon Hagel's status? Was it precautionary, which was kind of what, you know, Coop kind of implied that without really, you know, directly answering the question. Chernak also left the game. So he took a high stick that they missed in the first period. And then I think in the second period, during one of the Lightning's penalty kills, he got caught up high. It may have been he blocked a shot and the puck caught him up high. So maybe it was just like, Cherney, take the rest of the night off. That's fine. Lilleberg didn't finish the game too, but that was due to matching misconduct, 10-minute misconduct with Sam Bennett. Interesting, they just didn't have them return, even though there were more than 10 minutes left in the game. So it got really, really ugly. What you hope that the Lightning can take out of this is, you know, yeah, we stood up for each other, and we didn't let the Panthers get away, quote unquote, get away with this completely unnecessary sequence on Hagel with the sucker punch, cheap shot, and knocking him out of the game. So is it going to really matter moving forward? Is it going to change the way the Panthers play? Certainly not. Like, this is their identity. This is how they play. And they continue to play that way.
Yeah.
Like, the Lightning were giving, but they were getting too. Like, you know, Ekblad was he going after Chafee? I'm trying to remember who he went out of his way to, like, engage.
Chafee,
yeah, it was
Gord.
after a whistle. It was someone on the
Gord.
Lightning.
Yeah.
And, you know, so look, that's the way they go about it. At that point, you know, kind of the horses had left the barn. But it was definitely a game we don't see a lot in today's NHL. but it does happen sometimes. So the teams combined for almost 200 penalty minutes, and all of this could have been avoided if AJ Greer had decided to take a different course of action 7 minutes into the game. But he didn't.
Or if the officials throw him out. And so you
Or
want to
if the
take
officials-
responsibility.
There may have still been some stuff that happened because the
And that's
Lightning
fine.
were not happy about this Hagel situation.
And they
that
shouldn't.
much is clear.
And here's the other thing too. You wonder, and far be it for me to talk about retribution. Hockey players understand the code better than I do. But if you're going to take a swing at one of our best players, I've heard from a number of people who played the game, and you have too. All right, we're not going after Greer.
Yeah.
We're going to take a swing at your best player. Now, Barkov is out, but whoever that may be at that particular time. Cut the nonsense out. Now, some would say, well, Greg, I don't know if the Lightning have a player who would do that. You know what? Based off of what we saw last night, Lightning had a lot of guys who were willing to defend their teammates.
They were trying to engage Forsling.
Were they?
Forsling wanted
Yeah,
no part
they
of that.
were.
And that's not Forsling's game. I get
Right.
it. Just like it's not, the part of the game of maybe some Lightning players.
He was
Most
talking,
Lightning
though.
Players will,
He was talking.
most Lightning players will actually fight if they absolutely.
They were
Braden
engaged.
Point will fight. Kucherov has gotten involved before when he feels he has to defend himself, and he's had enough. But that's kind of what you're getting at. So, all right, I'm going to look up AJ Greer's stats right now. So he was new to the Panthers last year. And I remember seeing this about some of the other guys that have joined the Panthers. Like Ekman Larson, the year he was with the Panthers, he kind of became a different sort of player. And then he went to Toronto, and he kind of reverted to the player he'd been before. Nico Mikkola, kind of the same way. Like Mikkola was just a solid NHL defenseman with St. Louis and the Rangers, and he got to the Panthers, and, he kind of fit in with the way they like to play. So, all right, Greer in 61 games with the Bruins in 22-23 did have over 100 penalty minutes. So we'll call him, like, he's not one of these guys like Sabarin, had almost 200 penalty minutes in the AHL. Last year was his career high for penalty minutes. In a season, he had 130. But in 81 games last year, regular season games played, 81, he had 6 goals. We know how many goals Brandon Hagel scored last year. 35.
Yeah.
So we are not comparing apples to apples. We are comparing a guy who scored 6 goals who's on the fourth line with a guy who's slated to be on the Canadian Olympic team this year and was one of the key members of the Four Nations face-off Canadian championship team.
Right.
They won the gold medal. A guy who was considered one of the top players in the NHL. And AJ Greer targeted that guy. So to your point, and this is going back, this is old school. It's not AJ Greer, watch your back. It's pick a player on Florida. That guy. You go to Greer. You do this.
No doubt.
Pick that guy needs to watch his back.
Yeah.
That guy is going to answer for what you just did.
Yeah.
I know. That's the way it was handled years ago.
Yeah. And I'm not telling you that's, by the way, the wrong way.
And I'm
to
not sure
handle
if
it.
that's really the way it's handled today.
And would that have calmed things down? I don't know. But there is no doubt. And look, Cirelli can handle himself. And Cirelli's more than willing to jump in for his teammates. You have him on a line, at times to protect his buddy. The question's going to be an interesting one. You know how you could solve that problem? If you feel like somebody, and particularly against the Panthers, and maybe this dovetails into our next topic, which I want to get to, because there were some guys who opened up my eyes last night that I think was very encouraging. And we'll get to your questions, by the way, at Bolts Radio. You know how you may shut that nonsense down against at least the Florida Panthers? Okay. Cirelli and Hagel, you're going to be playing with Connor Geekie. Geekie, your job is to get open. Keep up with the guys. It's also to protect those two. And if you see anybody take a run at Hagel, understand your job is to make sure that doesn't happen again. Because I will tell you this. We saw an engaged Connor Geekie last night.
Mm-hmm. He had a great game.
It's one game. Acknowledge that. But that's what makes us like Geekie so much. I mean, the movie out on Seth Jones, just a beautiful play, and then the shot, obviously, was fantastic. But he was playing with an edge. He was hitting. He hit Bennett along the boards, near side to where we were.
Yep.
Shook Bennett a little bit. Bennett was kind of looking around like, okay, I took that number down. They were talking a little bit. Surprised maybe they didn't go. Maybe we'll see that down the road. But Geeky is, everybody talks about the Lightning need an enforcer. The Lightning need this. The Lightning need that. Those are hard to find in today's NHL, especially guys who can play. Because the Lightning want guys who can play up and down their lineup. Geeky is a rare breed, at least on this team, who has the size and skill, to essentially be a guy who can protect his teammates too. And one thing we found out last night, Dave, it's not just Aaron Ekblad who doesn't like Hagel.
Yeah.
I mean, the Panthers have an issue with Brandon Hagel. Could be he's just a good player, and they want to throw him off his game.
Or they are still irked about the Barkov hit.
Could be. Could be.
Which I will
It's
point
a
out.
very good point. It's a
I will
very
point
good
out. Remember how many games Barkov missed in the playoffs last year?
No.
0.
Right?
0 games. He took a hard hit.
Yeah.
Hagel got suspended for 1 game because Barkov reached for the puck but didn't touch it.
Right.
That was the problem with the hit. And if the Panthers as a group are still upset about that, I mean, the Lightning have way, way more to be upset about cumulatively based on what happened with Ekblad, which at least to me had way more intent. He got more game suspension, and Hagel was severely or at least seriously injured to the point that he could not play for the rest of the series. So again, compare these two situations. I don't know if it's that. Maybe you're right. Maybe they just don't like Brandon Hagel. But you cannot like another player
I can't
on the
read
other
their
team,
minds.
and you know the way you handle it is exactly what Brandon Hagel said after the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
If A.J. Greer had stepped in front of Hagel, didn't let Hagel go to the bench, and like, Hagel, we are going. It's possible Hagel would have been like, I'm not going in the preseason.
Well, and I'm not
Tap me
fighting
on the
you.
shoulder in November when we meet in the regular season.
But I'm not
that's-
fighting you.
Right, but I mean that's
what I
the
would've
way
said.
that's the
Yeah.
way you would handle it.
Yeah.
You don't get angry to the point that you
Agreed.
like high stick a guy, cross check, whatever you want to call it, and pop him in the face when he's not expecting it.
Agreed. And I don't want to be reactionary after one game, but we've seen this behavior from the Florida Panthers. And so are the Lightning going to change their identity as a team? No. Are the Lightning going to go out and get a 6'5" enforcer who's going to play 3 minutes a night and maybe just dress against teams like the Florida Panthers? No. But what do you have internally? And maybe it's a stretch because you have to see how things play out still. But maybe that was a game that, at least for me, and let's dovetail into Connor Geeky's game, because I think there were some other players too that showed well last night. I thought Mitchell Chaffee was engaged. And when he's engaged, man, I like he played with some sandpaper. He was angry, and I think he's more effective that way. I think most people are when you get them ticked off. He plays better that way. But I thought Geeky, Dave, was impressive. We talked about it on the show that he's a top 6 guy, at least with his pedigree, and maybe he didn't start the game last night in that space. But I'm telling you, I do think Connor Geeky can solve some problems, potentially, being in a top 6 for Tampa Bay, not only being a very good winger who can score, but also add some protection for his star teammates in a way.
He was running over everyone last night. It wasn't just that he scored a highlight reel goal against Seth Jones.
Beautiful play.
I would make the argument, Forsling's their best defenseman. It's not even close based on Forsling's pedigree. He's one of the best defensemen in the NHL.
He's a great defenseman.
Yeah, and he should win at least one Norris Trophy moving forward. That's how good he is. So Seth Jones is a very, very good player, and he was a key acquisition for the Panthers last year. But I would say Jones is their second best defenseman. And Geeky turned him into a pretzel. That was a very impressive move. But even beyond that, he was using his size and just steamrolling guys. I think it helped his game. helped Geeky's game, being engaged and involved like that.
He was completely in his element. I think that's, at least from what we've seen from Connor Geeky, the best of him in many ways last night. You saw somebody who brought it together, and people ask, because there are a lot of people who are down on Geeky. I mean, we just take the temperature from the tweets that we get and the questions we get. This is why you don't get too frustrated, because you can see some of that potential. I thought Declan Carlisle, I thought Crozier, and again,
Carlisle tried to engage Greer, and then he did fight Gadjevich, who was a tough customer.
And he got handled, but he went.
He hung in there. Yeah,
he went.
He went.
And that he won a lot of points. And you know what's funny is none of those younger players backed down. You could tell they all wanted to make an impression for their teammates who play regularly at the NHL level. And I think that goes a long way. We heard that word gamer a lot by players and John Cooper, and that maybe there is a bond here with some of these guys, because I think there's a mutual respect. A lot of these players left, Dave, can all play, and I think when you have that, you respect what they do. And then you get into a game like that where it's basically like, all right, boys, we got each other's back. Let's go. Somebody hits my guy, we're coming in to help. And whether it was Yanni Gord, whether it was Carlisle, whether it was Crozier, I mean, Lilleberg was looking for somebody. I mean, these guys were answering that call. And I've got to think a proud moment for some of those guys, maybe all of them. I think we all were like, yeah, can they dodge a bullet without anybody getting injured? Chernak got a little banged up. And
we got word he is not on the ice today. They just started their practice. Hedman not on the ice. Chernak not on the ice. Hagel not on the ice. Halverson not on the ice. That might be they're giving him
probably the day off, right?
The day off. He was staying on his skates for a long time last night.
Well, and
the game took 3 hours.
And would they basically like, that's your game? Before we send you down, it's going to be Johansson and Bassi. Assuming Bassi's ready to go and everything's good.
The other news yesterday is that I think some fans were wondering about the Lightning players that were put on waivers. They all cleared, but the Lightning themselves made a waiver claim, which you were asking me that question a little while ago. Radish not on the ice too. They may have given him just the day off.
It's a long game,
because he did finish the game last night.
Right. Yeah.
But you were asking me like, when was the last time the Lightning claimed one of these guys off waivers during this like late training camp, late preseason period? I'm like, I don't really remember. Well, they claimed Phoenix Copley, who's a veteran pro goalie with some NHL experience. And people were immediately wondering, well, what does this mean for Vasilevsky? Apparently nothing, because Vasi's on the ice, and Elliot Friedman even reported that Vasi is still expected to at least get some of tomorrow's game in Sunrise. So Coop kind of said there's nothing wrong with adding insurance at that position.
So if that's true,
and depth.
If the depth thing is true, you and I, this is why people have to listen to the show, we're talking about this a couple of weeks ago when I brought up Connor Ingram. I didn't say they should go out and claim anybody. I just said maybe. Yeah. Now, some people, though, still won't take what Friedman and Cooper said at face value and say, hey, maybe there's just a little uneasiness going on right now. And look, let's get as many guys in our system that we can afford who have some NHL experience at the goaltender position. Maybe Dave, maybe that is it. I can't answer that question. I mean, if Vasi's going to play tomorrow, you've got to think he's healthy. He's healthy. I mean, they wouldn't put him out there if he's not. But if there's like, we got to keep an eye on this, I'm just not too sure. Maybe part of that, too, is, okay, are we okay with Halverson as our third? Mm-hmm. And Copley does have experience.
Greg, if Phoenix Copley does not make the NHL roster, the Lightning have to send him down, and he's going to go through waivers again, and probably the Kings will just claim him right back.
Although the Kings, from what I've said, do they have a pretty decent goaltender pipeline?
Well, maybe, but they put Copley on waivers with the intention of sending him to their minor league team. That's where they wanted him.
Sure.
So if the Lightning put him on waivers, unless another team puts in a claim for him, the Kings can just claim him, and then they don't have to send him. Like,
what's
the
team
rule
that
on lost the player on waivers, if the player then is subsequently put back on waivers and there are no other claims, the original team can put in a claim and just send him right to the minors.
That's right.
Because basically,
yes,
he's cleared, right? Because no other team wants him. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I mean, right now we're just looking at it as the Lightning have another preseason game, and right now they have 4 goalies on their roster. I think it also is interesting to speculate, would they potentially summon some players that they've sent down? Not just because there is the specter of another very physical game, but just, they're a little bit shorthanded right now.
So
maybe not short to the point that they can't dress 20, but, we just told you the guys who aren't practicing today. So maybe they're just going to call up some healthy guys for the game tomorrow.
Legitimate question, partner. Let me ask you this just based off what we saw. And then the carnage afterwards. And when I say carnage, guys who aren't skating today. Would you just tell Point and Kucherov to stay home?
Well, you could. And look, they've gotten 2 games, and they got a lot of power play practice last night, admittedly without Hedman.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to see a similar type game tomorrow, though.
Well, but do you want to chance it?
Well,
in other words,
that's a decision for
because here was
management.
Chief sitting there going, you don't think the Florida Panthers on home ice aren't going to maybe that emotion? Now, that's what his take was.
I acknowledge what Chief is saying, but also look at things from the Panthers' perspective. You know who didn't finish the game last night for them? Anton Lundell. Now, I did see, remember Moser got into a little bit of a shoving match. I forget who was shoving him, but I saw a highlight. Moser, and it was not flagrant. Moser was jostling with Lundell in the Lightning defensive zone. It was in the second period, and he gave him a little push, and Lundell kind of fell awkwardly and actually kind of fell into Halverson a little bit. I mean, it wasn't flagrant. I'm not sure if that was Lundell's last shift, but that would explain why the Panthers got their hackles up with Moser. Now, did I think it was like flagrant? Certainly not. But so do the Panthers want like WWE in this next game? They have to start their season on Tuesday at 5:00. Because if you have a wild game, let's call it that, on Saturday, do you risk potentially losing some players? They were already shorthanded, not in terms of number of players they can dress, but in terms of their depth. No Barca, no Kachuk, no Nosek. What's the status with Anton Lundell? Maybe he just left for precautionary reasons. Who knows? I will tell you, though, that the guys that are on their roster that didn't play last night, other than Bobrovsky, are basically all depth players, the healthy ones. Tyler Mott, Jack Stadnicka, Noah Gregor, Uvis Polinskis, who he's probably the highest on the depth chart. He's a defenseman. Toby Bjornfoot. I mean, so this is just all I'm saying. The Panthers have to get ready for Tuesday. The Lightning have to get ready for Thursday. The Panthers are going to be 3 days away from opening their season and getting ready to, quote unquote, defend their cup again. I don't know. I mean, these games have a tendency to just take on a life of their own, and what lit the match clearly last night was the Greer-Hagel play. I don't know if we're going to have a play like that again on Saturday. And if we do, I'm not sure that it's going to rise to the level of kind of the all-out, everyone involved, every whistle leads to an altercation sort of game like we had last night. But Chief is right. Like, Panthers are at home. There may be, they feel, some more scores to settle. Who knows? We'll find out if the Lightning call up some players. Which they could do, because everyone who's in Syracuse is either cleared waivers or they are waiver exempt. So they could call up players for this final game and then send them back down.
I would not dress my big boys. That's me. I fully understand that what you said could happen. Very well could happen. Nothing could happen.
Yeah.
I'm not taking that chance. I'm just not doing it. And if I have the ability to bring up guys and it's a preseason game and my guys already got a couple of games in, what are we talking about here? What are we talking about? The last preseason game for Kucherov and Point to get ready? What if somebody crazy on Florida's team? Look, in the regular season it happens. I've seen enough
Yeah.
I'm curious if our audience agrees with that. Within reason. I understand you got to field a lineup, you got to play, yada, 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 but it's the last preseason game. It's like the last preseason game in the NFL. You know, it's that third one that you get excited about. And then that last one, most of the starters sit. If you can. I was actually even contemplating. Here's how crazy I thought the Panthers were last night to a degree. Does Vasi even need to get into a game? Imagine them running him. Yeah. And then you're like, after everything he's going through this preseason, why? So those are just some things. I'm curious what our audience has to say at Bolts Radio. Do you want to get into some questions? I'm getting a ton.
Yeah, let me just give the
Anything
lines.
else?
And again, this is kind of a weird practice because there are so many players not on the ice. But you got Gensel, Point, Kucherov. You got Geeky, Sorelli, Gonsalves with no Hagel. You got Bjorkstrand, Gord, Chafee, which was a line last night. And good to see that Holmberg is skating. He is on a line with Finley and Gergensons. Dominic James is filling in at D because the Lightning only have 5D that are skating. Okay. McDonough is with Crozier. Lilleberg is with Carlisle. J.J. Moser is with James.
Moser played with an edge last night, too. What was the
Moser
most I've
played
seen
with an
him?
edge.
That's
Yep.
the most I've seen him. Do you remember, who's their play-by-play guy? Matt McConnell?
Steve Goldstein?
When he was with Moser's original team.
Arizona. Yeah.
Was it Matt McConnell?
Yes.
Didn't he? Remember we had him on, and didn't he reference something about how Moser can fight?
Yeah,
he
did.
And we went back and tried
did.
to find some YouTube clips. I couldn't find any, which doesn't mean, but
He didn't
that
really
would have been
have a
interesting.
fight. I'm looking at the
No,
game
he didn't.
here. Did he actually even get a penalty? He got
He
a
might not
2-minute
have.
minor for cross-checking. I don't even remember that. Maybe that was the play with Anton Lundell. It really wasn't much. By the way, one of the weakest penalties, and this was also on Lundell, the one at the beginning of the second period on Dominic James. You believe they called that penalty? He gave Lundell a little tap, and Lundell fell down, and the Panthers scored on the power play following that penalty. We saw a lot worse that wasn't called last night, but maybe at that point they were like, all right, we're just going to be really tight on anything that happens. Right. James played well again last night. I mean, it's probably not in the cards for him to make the opening night roster, and the fact that they have him slotting on defense in this practice is another indication.
He doesn't look out of place, though, does he?
He does not look out of place.
No.
And, in the first period, before the game really got out of hand, he had a couple of good plays in the offensive zone. He had a give and go with Crozier. Remember that early in the game? And then he had one shift in the defensive zone where the Lightning got caught out in the D zone a little bit. He stayed on Seth Jones. Jones tried to walk the blue line, skated to the circle. James stayed right with him, checked him, erased him, separated him from the puck. The Lightning got it back. They tried to clear it. They didn't clear it. Reinhart, who did this twice in the first period, gloved down a puck as it was about to leave the zone. The first time he did it, he held it in, and the Panthers worked it around. The second time he gloved it down, James just flattened him and knocked him down, and they got the puck and got it out. So it's not just that this guy has the skill set that we talked about and can skate and, good offensive instincts and is hard on the puck. He made some pretty good defensive plays. I just gave you two on the same shift, but he clearly, is responsible and brings that same edge when he doesn't have the puck. Mm-hmm. But the reality is 23 years old, no games of NHL experience, waiver exempt. It's probably a situation where he's targeted for Syracuse, but he has had a very, very memorable preseason for the Lightning.
Let's get to some questions. Then we can dovetail into some other stuff if we need to, partner. George on YouTube. Given how out of control the game last night got, do you think we'll see some of the heavier boys get called up from Syracuse for tomorrow night?
Well, we kind of touched on if the Lightning would call up reinforcements. And if they do, that's one reason I think why they dressed Schmidt and Sabourin for the Orlando game. That game was far, far quieter by comparison. It's possible.
Stay tuned, George. Tampa Bay on X says, I genuinely don't know who should make the roster. Like, there's no rational argument to keep James off the team, or Finley or Geeky. And then you also have Peltier, Crozier, Carlisle in defense. No clue how they're going to figure this one out. At least with Peltier clearing, there's no worry about any of them being lost.
Yeah, this is when they use that expression, a good problem to have. It is a problem because it's a situation with difficult decisions, but it's good because you have all this competition. Yeah. And I think that, if you do have a rash of injuries or somebody's performance slips a little bit, you have guys who are ready to come up and, as they say, chomping at the bit, right?
That's 100% true. Competition it makes it tough, but that's what you want as an organization. Austin on YouTube, love the show. Thank you for all you do. Do you believe players like James, Crozier, and Geeky could really help bringing a youthful and enforcing influence on the Bolts? Yes. You need it. Mm-hmm. Austin, you take a look at some of the teams over the years that have won cups, and look at the Tampa Bay Lightning. When they've won some cups, they've had some younger players develop, at the right time. Also made some strategic trades, of course. That's a big deal. Third line, we know, with Coleman, Goodrow, and Gord. So for sure, but think about some of the younger guys they were able to either acquire and develop or develop on their own that allowed them to be competitive and get them over the hump a little bit. So I absolutely think it can breathe new life, some young blood. You always hear that, partner, young blood in that lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times in your bottom six is where you're going to see a lot of change with players. And you need younger players to come up and be productive on affordable contracts. And the Lightning have the potential here for a few of these guys to do that at some point. Might not start the season, but, at some point contributing. And I think that's a big deal. Martin on Facebook says, watch the game last night. Awesome game. I enjoy like the good old days. I hope the GM wakes up and gets a player who defends his team. Too many players who don't have fire, don't play gritty games like 93-22, 28-17, 62, among others.
Well, on the one hand, he said he loved the game. On the other hand, he's saying that, I'm sorry. The GM needs to wake up. What was that? The GM
Steve,
needs to wake
let
up
Julian
and
know,
get
Steve.
other
Come
players. On. Didn't what you saw last night show that the Lightning have guys who will stick up for each other?
Do you think, some people, they see Pat Maroon, with the Lightning, and we need somebody like that.
Yeah.
We need somebody like that.
Look, I'm probably going to put my foot in my mouth saying this, but just like Cooch is a very unique player, like a one-of-a-kind sort of player, in a way, like in a much different capacity, Pat Maroon was a bit of a one-of-a-kind type of guy. Like, yes, there are players who have big personalities on the ice, and Maroon has that. Like, Maroon can chirp, Maroon could fight. Maroon made everyone feel bigger on the bench. Not all tough guys necessarily can have as big of an impact as Maroon had on his teammates, whether it was with the Lightning or others. Mm-hmm. I think that's one reason why Pat Maroon won 3 Stanley Cups in a row. He had an impact on the ice, but he had a very, very big impact on just the team cohesiveness and playing big.
I think you're right.
They're hard. Not everybody is cut from a Pat Maroon cloth, is what I'm saying.
No, I think that's fair. I also think, you had Luke Shen.
Yes.
Who helped with that. Bogosian. These were guys.
But let's remember, Greg, Shen and Bogosian both at points with the Lightning were in and out of the lineup.
Yeah.
They were there, like they were available to be used, but they didn't always play regularly.
No.
I don't know. The Lightning are not going to be the Panthers. The Lightning don't want to be the Panthers. They want to be the Panthers, and that the Panthers are the top dog right now. Yes. The Panthers play a street yard brawl kind of game.
Yeah.
That's the way they play, and it works for them. I don't know that is really the way the Lightning, they certainly haven't played that way. And I don't think it's in the cards that they're going to play that way. That's why I keep saying, like, players come to the Panthers and they become street yard brawlers. They do. They leave the Panthers and they revert to the guy they were before they joined the Panthers. This is the way Florida likes to play, and the Panthers have had great, great success playing this way. In addition to all of the other things that I'm not saying that like this is the only part of their game, but Lundell not on the ice for Florida practice today. Thank you, Steve. You know, they have world-class players.
Yep.
They play incredible team defense. They're able to reach an extraordinarily high level for an extended period of time. They know how to win. Like, all of that is part of it too. But part of their DNA is, if you join the Panthers, like, it is on. Like, don't even look at me that way. And if they have to take penalties, they'll take penalties. A lot of teams don't play that way. They'll be tough, but I think the Panthers are a little unique in that regard. And if you're going to try and emulate them and be them, that's not who you are, and it's not who you are. It's like, you know, putting a right shoe on your left foot. I mean, I don't think it's going to work.
I agree with all of that, which is why Geeky, I think you have to work with what you have. I think that's why Geeky's intriguing, just because, like you said about Pat Maroon being unique to a degree, Geeky's it can be unique. The size, the skill, being able to handle himself. Alan on YouTube says, with the caution being taken with Vasi during the preseason, should Johansson get more games than just back-to-back to save Vasi for a playoff run if we get there? That question won't go away, by the way.
Yeah.
We've been getting that for a couple of years.
I mean, if Vasi is healthy, they tend to throw him out there 3 out of every 4. That's the way it tends to play out.
I would agree. I think you can change that slightly as a player does get older. Minutes per game for forwards or defensemen. Guys stay in great shape. Goaltender, I think it's a little different. I think it's hard on your body. It's hard on the hips. It's hard on the back. We know Vasi's had surgery to deal with that. I think to answer that question, that may be predicated on where the Lightning are in the standings and how well Johansson's playing. In other words, if the Lightning find themselves in a situation where they need to make the playoffs and they're the 9th seed and in a month out, I mean, you could see Vasilevsky playing a ton of games. Or if the season feels off, you may ride your horse longer. Maybe not. But some of that, too, is Johansson playing well. Can Johansson take on a bigger workload than what you've given him?
Yeah.
So I think that's how I would answer that question on the surface. Sean on Facebook says, nice to see the boys grab their 12 points in this 10-game block. That's only 7 preseason games, LOL. Love the preseason victories. I've always thought that leads to great things in the regular season.
Well, the Lightning have had a lot of great regular seasons, and they've never been 6-0 in the preseason. But I'm sure there are a lot of people who can look at the data and say, oh, all these teams that did extremely well in the preseason.
Let me just say this.
These records, I'm not sure that one leads to the other.
I think if you went to every team in the league, but especially the Lightning, quietly, do you just want to forfeit Game 7 of the preseason? Yes. We don't have to. We're ready. Ready. We don't need that 7th game. And which is why I asked the question, do you leave some of the star players at home for our audience to weigh in? Kyle on Facebook says Geeky and Crozier looked very good.
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
No doubt. Crozier has had another one of these guys that we've been talking about.
I mean, is he top 6? Are we fooling ourselves at this point? I mean, I know, look, righty, lefty, but just you take a look at overall ability. I just like his game. I don't know. I feel like he makes the right play.
Well, at this point, I mean, if the Lightning continue to be kind of dinged up on defense.
He's going to play, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to call it now. This is one of my bold predictions. I think Hedman-Crozier eventually will be a pair. I want to see that. I think Crozier can do it. Now, he may not be like the Hedman plays 25 minutes, so does Crozier. You're trying to tell me he couldn't do what Jan Ruta did?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hedman's going to get more minutes playing the power play. And if you're on the top Lightning power play unit, you get a lot of power play time.
But bear with me here.
Because that first unit tends to be out there. But yes, what you're saying is Rudo was Hedman's partner for much of the 5-on-5 action, but invariably always played significantly less than Hedman because they work in the special teams.
If
Crozier can play power play, though. Like, they threw him out there when Radish was in the box,
out.
right? Yeah. Radish was unavailable after his fight.
Here's my thinking, and I understand not every example is as clear-cut as this, but in many ways, Chernak became the defenseman he was because he played with Ryan McDonough. And I'm not saying McDonough and Hedman are the same players, and some would say it's very difficult to play with Victor Hedman because of his roaming capabilities. But I get the sense Crozier is more of a defensive defenseman, can skate, and would understand that. Why couldn't you think playing with Hedman wouldn't have the same effect on Crozier as it had with Chernak and McDonough? I mean, I would want a young guy. I know there's a lot of responsibility, but it's not like Crozier is a first-year pro. He's played there a little bit. He's been there, at least in the minor leagues. So, and of course, what does that do? That moves Moser down.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of figure out what you want to do there. It speaks more about Crozier's play more than anything, and that's all I'm saying. How do you find ways to utilize him a little bit more? So that's where I would go with that. Marin on Facebook says, Greer is there to do that job. You can't compare a fourth line to a first line player. The problem is that our fourth line players don't do anything. Last season, you had Sherry playing fourth line doing nothing. That's the problem with the Lightning.
Well, that's a broad stroke, Marin. You don't need your fourth line to be, guys that are going to fight. I think, look, forward depth was an issue last year.
We talked about that.
We acknowledge that.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Fair enough. Oh. But, I mean, to suggest that the Lightning don't have guys who will fight is just false. It just is not true. So, the identity of your bottom six, you want guys who are going to grind it out and play hard, not get scored on, push play, chip in a goal here and there, and again, kind of the identity of the Panthers, and I'm probably speaking a little broadly here because I don't think Barkov plays that way. I don't think Reinhart plays that way. Forsling doesn't play that way. But many of the other guys do. And many of the players who play in their fourth line do. Now, they started the playoffs last year with Nico Sturm centering their fourth line. I don't think Nico Sturm necessarily plays that way. But Greer does. Gadjevich does, for sure. And they were in the lineup last night. Does Tomáš Nosek play that way? Not so much. So, I mean, every player kind of has his own identity and what he has done to earn a spot and keep a spot in the NHL. Let's see how the Lightning look this year with their bottom six. I think what we have noticed in camp is that the Lightning have some options at forward to slot in what would probably be the bottom six. But these guys that have showed well in the preseason, how many of them are cut from the AJ Greer cloth, Marin? Like, I'm asking honestly. Boris Kachuk plays really, really hard. I mean, I think based on what he showed in the preseason, I think he might slide in well on the fourth line, but he may not be the exact same player as Greer or Gadjevich. Does it matter? As long as he's being effective in the role that he's in. I guess what I'm hearing from a lot of fans is what we heard from them through the playoffs, even last year, when you get knocked out by your rivals, and then your rival's going to win the Stanley Cup twice. You think we need to be like them. Why are we not like them? The Lightning are not like the Panthers. The Lightning are the Lightning. When the Lightning were winning their cups, the Panthers were different. I mean, there are elements that you can take out in terms of like knowing how to win. We hear that a lot in the playoffs, right? Ed talked about that when he joined us, D'ing up. I mean, I think that there are components to championship teams, but I trust Julian Brisebois to build the team that is best suited to take the Lightning to where they want to go.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I mean, if they have players like Roman Schmidt or Lilleberg, who can certainly throw them, Chernak can certainly fight. They have players like that. When they were winning cups, they had Pat Maroon, but it's not like Pat Maroon fought every single night. So
Yeah,
I'm not sure that really was a satisfying answer for you, Marin. I appreciate the comments, but I don't know that there's like only one path. I think the Lightning felt that they wanted to upgrade kind of their bottom six. I think they feel they did that. We haven't seen Pontus Holmberg yet. I will tell you right now, Pontus Holmberg is not that sort of player, but is he potentially a very valuable addition for the Lightning? Yes, he is.
I'm excited to see him play.
Yeah. I think Finley can fight. I mean, go watch a YouTube video of his fight against Rochester in the playoffs last year. He basically knocked a guy. I don't know if he knocked him out, but he knocked him down. Like he popped him.
He's got that reach.
It was not a sucker punch.
You know, that's 6'6".
They both dropped the gloves. Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
big man. He's got toughness.
Right.
And he has had a very, very good preseason and training camp. He's on track to make the team. And if he makes the team, he's going to be used in that bottom six role with some specialty assignments, probably like face-offs to the right of the goalie. I mean, he plays with an edge, I think.
Gergensons plays with an edge. I mean, I don't
Gergensons
know how
can
much
play
of a
with an
fighter he
edge.
is, but he can handle himself a little
Yeah.
bit. B Love on Facebook says, another classic match between the Kittens and Bolts. Great to see everyone in the lineup get involved. Hopefully they got it out of their system while the games don't count. Is this the biggest rivalry in hockey?
Well, that's a good question. There are
Hard to
probably some
gauge.
other teams that would want to cast a vote.
In terms of
But-
being competitive and winning and not liking each other, hard to beat it right now.
Yeah,
'Cause I
the
do
fact
think-
that they play each other, they played each other a lot in the playoffs, going back to 2021. So, what they played every year but one in the playoffs, going back to 2021, and the team that won the series ended up going to the Stanley Cup final every single one of those years. But they met early in the playoffs, and sometimes, like the rivalries, not so much East-West, but maybe if you meet later in the playoffs, because there's more at stake, right? It's not the first round. I don't know. It's definitely one of the biggest rivalries right now in the NHL. Rivalries peak and ebb based on how competitive the teams are. I mean, in the 80s, the Battle of Alberta was extremely fierce, Calgary and Edmonton, because they were both teams with legitimate cup aspirations. And in fact, they won a lot of cups between them. Edmonton won a lot more. They had Gretzky, right? But Calgary got them a couple of times and won the cup in 89, which is after Gretzky had left the Oilers. But they did beat them in 86 and got to the Stanley Cup final, Calgary. That was one of the biggest rivalries in the history of the NHL, in my mind. Boston, Montreal, that's been a great rivalry for years.
When you meet in the
years.
playoffs, it makes it
amps
makes
up.
it fun.
Yeah.
You know, it makes it fun. B Love also on Facebook says, after an in-depth look at the power play, it seems they're not giving up on the complicated passes entering the ozone and overpassing, making it hard to love. Eddie was definitely missed. Not sure who's ready to take his place when needed on the top unit. Also, has Geeks taken that next step? Cheers from Charlotte.
So what Phil and I said about the power play last night, so the power play got 9 chances. Admittedly, Hedman wasn't on the ice, and at points they didn't have Radish either. But what we said was, in going 2 for 9 against this Florida penalty kill, remember they went 2 for 18 in the playoff series last year, and they went 2 for 18 in 4 regular season games against the Panthers. The Panthers penalty kill gives the Lightning's power play problems. It does. I think the Panthers penalty kill may give the Lightning's top power play, more problems than many other penalty kills in the NHL. So the Lightning are not playing the Panthers every single night. So it may just be that if they keep running into problems, And I understand they scored 2 goals last night. I will explain what happened on those 2 goals. But if they keep running into problems against the Panthers penalty kill, maybe they have to, make some adjustments. But against other teams that don't execute as well as the Panthers do against the Lightning's top power play unit, maybe you don't need to make these same sorts of adjustments. So the Panthers can anticipate very well, and not just last night, going back to the playoffs, last couple of years, really since Paul Maurice took over as their head coach. I think that they do a great job of reading and anticipating where the Lightning are going with the puck when the Lightning are trying to work it around in zone. So that, like an aggressive kill, which is the sort of kill that they have, an aggressive kill is effective when, quote unquote, you can get to the quarterback, right? If you don't get to the quarterback, you're going to be out of position. The Panthers anticipate so well that they are basically getting to the quarterback. They are hurrying what the Lightning want to do because the Lightning are not getting the puck to somebody in a position to do anything except try and get rid of it quickly because he's feeling pressure. So I don't know if it's just that they've scouted it well. I mean, Kucherov has a lot of deception in his game, but he doesn't seem to have the same ability against the Florida penalty kill in many instances to deceive them. Now, part of it is he's got a guy bull rushing him, right? So they are basically taking away options. Phil and I said they may need to make an adjustment in zone. However, they scored their 2 goals last night on the power play off the rush. It's less common to score a power play goal off the rush, but you do have, entries. And the part of the fans' question or comment where, they said too fancy on the entries. Well, they scored 2 goals off entries. And one of them, Bjorkstrand took a hit from Kulikov, got the puck down low. They got an odd man situation out of it. It was like a 3-on-2 down low. That was the first Gensel goal. The second Gensel goal, the Panthers had a breakdown on the entry. Gensel got loose down the wing and had a terrific finish. So, unlike the in-zone setup, the breakout and the entry may have some different looks to it. Yeah, it's usually Point and Kucherov and they're bringing it in, but it's not always exactly the same. And, they had some success last night. If you scored 2 goals on entries, that to me is a success in a game. So that was kind of my takeaway. But again, they play 4 games against the Panthers. They play 78 against other teams.
Yeah, that's fair.
And if they go, 2 for 18 against the Panthers again in the regular season series, we're going to have these same questions, and we'll try and break it down as honestly as we can. But I think that's what Phil saw last night, and I agree with him. I think in zone, the Lightning have a problem with how the Panthers are anticipating quickly and reacting and executing very, very well.
And that's fair. And I think we are judging this based off of the lack of success they had against the Panthers, not in its totality. Because in its totality last year, Dave, it was in the, top 5, correct?
Yeah.
And it was a very good power play. But I think people were going to focus on where they came up short. And so my question to you is, the critique you hear, I hear this as well, and I think you were just kind of explaining this, is that to a degree, the Lightning's power play, because it runs through Kucherov, on the surface feels like it's predictable. In other words, there's not a lot of movement. It's going to Kuch. He's going to make a great pass, or he's not. It's kind of as simple as that. He's going to find somebody, and it goes through him. For the Panthers, is that easier to defend than some other teams who don't maybe have the defensive system in place on the PK to handle that lone threat? Because of it, I don't want to say, are the Lightning just predictable on their power play because of one player? But that makes them very successful. So it's a give and take. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if there's going to be a ton of adjustments. I don't. I think you have to hope that Kucherov, in a game against the Panthers, figures out how to beat them. You can put anybody on the left side, partner, and maybe if you had a Stamkos, it opens things up for Kucherov to make those passes because you have to respect the threat. Maybe that's what we're talking about. I'd have to go back and look at the power play numbers the Lightning had over the Panthers when Stamkos was playing compared to collectively what we saw last year. I don't know what that would be. We just focus on the playoffs when it mattered the most. But assuming the Lightning don't get somebody with a big one-timer who's as consistent as Stamkos, by the way, they're not out there, are the Lightning just going to have to be predictable with the way they set up, how they operate, and hope that the one guy who does orchestrate everything has a good game?
Well, Phil has talked about this for years, but he feels that they should have more of a shooting mentality on the power play. Maybe that's what the fan is alluding to. So you have the same setup, but instead of looking to kind of make a pass with a higher difficulty quotient, that the Panthers may be able to break up, you are more willing to just direct pucks to the net and create chaos. That's not really the way that this power play, the first unit anyway, tends to operate, but that could be an adjustment. And, Phil, every time the Lightning pass up a shot, you hear him like groan on the air, right? Because he sees that if it were him, he would take that shot. He loved to shoot.
And again, this is the predictability of Kucherov. He's just not that player. Well, I mean, you and I have talked about is part of this issue, Kucherov becoming more of a shooter than a passer. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't. We'll talk about this more on Monday when we'll have the full roster, right? I mean, we had a great week with people chiming in. If you have questions coming in, we'll get to you on Monday. We've got a game tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I will talk to you. You'll be on the
Amerant
road.
Bank Arena.
Yeah, how about that? I'll speak to you a little closer to the puck dropping. We'll do our little back and forth, and then we'll talk in the post game. And then you and I will be back at it with our show, noon to 1, kind of seeing where this team is, and hopefully a full roster of healthy bodies, I think is what we want to see. And we'll go from there. So great job this week.
Yeah, you too.
And we'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Talk to you tomorrow.
Steve Versnick, thank you. Jared Johnson as well. I am Greg Linnelli. And to all of you who've been listening and participating, we appreciate it. Keep it going. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Tell people you don't like and have them listen to us. Why wouldn't you? We'll be on the airwaves again weekdays, Monday through Friday, noon to 1. This is Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.